Got to give the people what they want. People trying to get their homework, trying to get this homework done. So let's get it. This one should be pretty short for you all. We got a lot of the notes that you needed in class. All right, we're going to do some more practice. We're going to work with the graphs of sine and cosine, so write that down. Go ahead and draw this graph that you see that I just started. So go ahead and draw that graph exactly how I drew it. Notice everything is lining up on the lines here and whatnot. So go ahead and make a careful drawing of that graph. Cool, so you did it. First thing I want you to do now, I want you to write down, I want you to do all this before me. What's the period of this graph? What's the midline? And what's the amplitude? You go ahead and pause and figure those things out. Look back at your notes if you need to. Cool. Hopefully you looked at that and you see the period is how long it takes to repeat itself. So it goes from here to here when it starts to repeat again. So it makes my period 2 pi. Because we're still talking about a circle. So my period hasn't changed in this particular situation. 360 degrees. Which is one rotation all the way around the circle. All right? My midline. Well, where is the middle of this graph? So I see that this graph goes from, what, 0 to 4. So the midline must be right here at 2. Excuse me. So it's like we have a midline at 2. And you see this is where we see half above and half below the midline, okay? So my midline would be right at 2. So what is my amplitude? My amplitude is from the midline to the highest point. Right here is my amp. And in this case, my amplitude is from 2 to 4, so my amplitude is also 2. All right, so hopefully you got that down. Next question I would like you to ponder. Does this graph right here represent sine or cosine? And why? I want you to write out in words why you believe this is a sine graph or why you believe this is a cosine graph. And I'll even give you a hint. Remember, sine, ooh, ugly. Sine is distance from the ground. Cosine is distance from the pole. DFTG, DFTP. Distance from the ground, distance from the pole. So which one is this? All right, hopefully you recognize that this is a cosine graph. Well, one, cosine always starts at the highest point. Always starts at the highest point. And the reason for that, why does cosine always start at the highest point? You don't need to draw this circle, but why? Well, if this is a unit circle and cosine is distance from the pole, when I'm at 0 right here, I'm the farthest distance from the pole possible. So I was going to start at 1 or at 2 or whatever your highest point is. If it's sine, we're measuring distance from the ground. So sine actually always starts at 0 because it always starts on the ground if I'm measuring distance from the ground at the 0 point. But this is cosine. It always starts at the highest point because we measure angle 0 first, and that is farthest from the pole. If you didn't explain something around those lines, you might want to change what you wrote, okay? Now the last thing that I want you to do is I would like for you to draw a unit circle that actually matches this graph. So I'm going to go ahead and pause, or you guys can go ahead and pause and draw the unit circle now. Cool. Hopefully you just did that. Let me draw my own circle here. So here's my unit circle. And I'm going to go ahead and put in an X and Y axis. Boom, boom. Okay. So for my unit circle, what do I know? I know that my midline is 2. So, I gotta pay attention. So here's my X and Y. Here's my origin right here. Here's 1. I'm gonna make this bigger now. Here's 2. Here's 3. Here's 4. I know my midline should be at 2, which it now is. The middle of this circle, basically, middle of this graph, the middle of the circle is at 2. I know my amplitude is 2. Uh-oh. I got to change my circle a little bit. Hopefully you recognize why I got to change my circle. So I'm going to go back and do that. So my circle, actually I'm going to start by saying, boom, my amplitude is, so between, that's about the middle. It's my midline, that's at 2. And my amplitude is going to be 2, so from here to here is 2, so this should be 4. From here to here is 2, so this should be 0. Again, this is not to scale, so that means here's my origin, way down here. Right, so this is 0, this is like 1, this is like 2, this is like 3, and this is 4. So my scale is bad, but hopefully you get the idea. Okay, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And let me stop.